Is Part 61 better than Part 141? Hey guys, my name is Katie. I'm a professional pilot and a flight instructor since 2017, and I am here to give you the pros and cons of Part 61 versus Part 141 and which one I think is better. Now, there's a lot of people on the internet that think I just hate Part 141. That's not necessarily true. I just think that there's a lot of misinformation, and I want to kind of give you guys an insider scoop from someone who's in the industry, and then you can make the best decision for you because everybody's situation is different. So first of all, if you don't know what these two things mean, basically it's just rules and regulations that cover two different types of flight training. Part 141 is more standardized and regulated, meaning that there's stage checks, there's certain lessons that have to be in certain orders, and so forth. This is normally more like a standard flight school or a big university, aeronautical university, where people go to learn to fly. Part 61 could just be a random flight instructor and a random airplane doing their thing. Now, the thing is, both of these are regulated with check rides and DPEs and lots of rules and lots of things that you have to do to finish each one. So the first thing that a lot of people say when they're talking about 141 versus Part 61 is that you're gonna get a better training in Part 141. Now, I don't necessarily think this is true. The argument behind that is, oh, it's more regulated, you have stage checks, you have classroom instructed, and so forth. However, there's still an ACS, which is basically the document that everybody has to check off and it's testing standards they have to meet. You still have to pass the check ride with a DPE, and you have to do the maneuvers to the same standard. So at the end of the day, you're gonna be at a check ride where you have to do the same thing. If you get there and pass the check ride, that's kind of the great equalizer to me. Now, what I have heard, I did not go Part 141, but what I have heard is that people have a more in-depth knowledge of certain aviation concepts if they go Part 141, because maybe they had like an actual college class, which was like Aerodynamics 101, as opposed to Part 61, where you kind of just study on your own a little bit more. However, the other side of that argument is a lot of aviation is just self-study. So whether you go to a big pilot middle school or not, you're usually studying a lot on your own and then asking your personal instructor questions you don't really understand. If you don't like to study and you cannot self-motivate, aviation is going to be a very hard time for you. You're gonna take a check ride every 6 months for the rest of your life if you're Part 135 or 121, which most of you are going to be, which is like airlines or charter flying. So get used to the studying. If you can't study on your own, it might be a little bit of a hard time, and that just means that you need to learn how to study. You need to learn your methods. Do you need to walk around and talk out loud to study? Do you need to write things over and over again 15 times? Do you need to work with a person and have them quiz you? So you got to learn all that. You got to dial in your method. And at the end of the day, it's really on you. You got to study on your own. So I don't necessarily think that matters all that much. That is the counter argument. And I will say that there could be something to that. If you're someone who interviews people at airlines and you see a big difference between 141 and Part 61, I'd love to hear that in the comments. The other big difference between Part 61 and Part 141 is the financing. So there's two parts to this, basically the price tags and then the ability to get financing and loans. So Part 61 is generally a good bit cheaper than Part 141. Part 141 may have more of an overhead they have to cover. They may have facilities and airplanes and multiple instructors and a lot of different things that they may have to cover rather than just like a guy with a 172 and he can keep his costs down a little bit more. I have not found a big difference in the quality personally. I visited a lot of Part 141 schools when I was going through my training and I was just like, I don't know why the exact same airplane is that much more expensive. The instructors are gonna be the same. A lot of the instructors will work at both. They'll like work at the Part 141 school during the day and then they'll like freelance at the Part 61 guy's airplane on the side. So like you're not getting a difference in instructors really. So to me, it really didn't make a big difference. I just chose airplanes that I was comfortable with and I chose the cheaper one. Now, some people really care about this. They really want the glass cockpit or they want the 172 with air conditioning or whatever it may be. And that's a personal decision. So no hate on either one of those choices, but Part 141 is generally more expensive. These aeronautical universities also, you're going to be getting a degree out of it. So some people think that's valuable as well. I personally think you can get a degree a lot cheaper, like online in business or something, and you can still have that bachelor's to check a box in airline hiring. Right now, a lot of the airlines don't require a bachelor's, which will probably change. They'll probably go back to requiring it. So good to kind of have it if you want it, if you need it in the future. The other part of the financing piece of this puzzle is 141, you do have the ability to get more loans. So that is a big difference. Most of us don't just have like $100,000 sitting around and we're gonna pay cash for this. Maybe you're fortunate enough that you can like get a personal loan from a family member and then pay them back, or get a personal loan from your bank, whatever it may be. But if you're, normal human being in America, you're just like, I need a loan, and how do I get that when I'm, young and trying to learn how to fly? So a lot of these Part 141 schools and the universities, they will have financing available through them. So that can be a good thing. It can also be really shady, so just be careful, because I have heard a lot of stories of Part 141 schools where you got your financing through them. Halfway through your private pilot's license, you learn, I do not like this school, I'm at 80 hours and I don't even have a PPL and I never get to fly, and they're overbooked, and like whatever it may be. And then you say, hey, I'm done, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna go do the rest of my training somewhere else. And they're like, no, that financing is gonna stay with us. So good luck with that, So I've heard that a lot. So just be aware of that and really do your research on that individual school. Now, another thing to consider when you're deciding if you wanna go Part 141 or Part 61 is your timeline. Now, a lot of people wanna get this done fast. If you don't, you really should. You should be really trying to get through your training as fast as possible, building your hours and getting to whatever airline or job that you may want, and just building seniority and moving your career on. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of people in aviation where they're like, I'm gonna learn to fly, and then I'll check back up with them and 4 years later, they're like, oh yeah, I just soloed. It's like, dude, get it done. Like, if you wanna get it done, you will find a way. And if you don't, it's just not gonna happen. People inherently just do what they actually wanna do. So even if life gets in the way, like, people had life going on throughout everything that they did with training, and some people just hammer it out and some people have drug it on. So that's a personal part of the problem, but if you're trying to get it done quickly, 141 and 61 can be a difference. Now, Part 141 is usually going to be like more structured, so sometimes you'll move faster because you just have a set, formula, and you're gonna move through their courses. But if you find the right Part 61 situation, which is usually like an independent CFI in my experience, their schedule is open and they have good maintenance on the plane, you can slam that thing out. And when you interview CFIs, you need to ask them, be like, hey, I want to get this done in 1 month. And I understand my aptitude is whatever it is, and we don't know yet how fast I'm gonna train, but can you be available to fly 2 times a day because I wanna get this done in this timeline? Does that match you? And it may work out, right? So take that into account. I know I've talked to some people who are a little older getting into aviation. They were in their late 50s and saying, I think I might go to an aeronautical university. And I'm like, absolutely not, because that's 4 years. Like, you're gonna be 62 when you get out of that, and you're basically needing to retire at that point. So if time is of the essence, you need to take it into your own hands and maybe go Part 61 in that case. Now, obviously I kind of tend to favor Part 61, but that doesn't mean Part 141 is bad. A lot of people have gotten scholarships for those universities. Maybe they did military ROTC, maybe they, worked at that school and they had a great experience. And, there is some notoriety to being like, I went to Embry-Riddle, I went to UND, or whatever the case may be, and you have a lot of connections out of that. Networking is important, and if they have a pathway that you can join and you feel really confident in that, that might be really good for you. So again, neither one is bad, neither one is inherently good or bad. These are just pros and cons to take into account, and I hope this helps you make your decision. So overall, these are some things to think about, and learning to fly is really tough no matter how you go about it. So there's really no wrong answer. It's really a huge accomplishment, and you should be proud of yourself regardless of which side of the house you pick. And I don't hate 141. There's just some pros and cons to consider, and everybody's situation is different, so I hope this information helps you make the right choice for you.